Today on the Angry Catholic Show, we're going to tackle Child USA. Our angry item of the day is not just American priests and a mandatory reporter fined. Welcome. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Richard Windmann from the SCSA. Back in 2002, we were all told by the bishops that they were going to fix the abuse problem in the church. Well, in 2013, a priest that our family was close with was arrested in a car with a 15-year-old boy. Last year, Ed Locke, the music director for St. Nicholas Parish in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, was caught on video and text luring what he thought was a 15-year-old boy to his house at midnight. And our bishop has yet to tell the parishioners why he was removed from ministry. And last October, Father Lockney, who was the first seminarian Bishop Bambera ever ordained to the priesthood, was arrested for luring two minor boys to his house. Other than a general statement from the diocese, not a word. But the bishops continue to assure us that they've taken care of the problem. And yet none of the bishops are investigating how this happened and continues to happen. Today, sexual abuse survivors are being re-abused by diocesan authorities who ignore and stonewall those seeking justice. If Catholics don't speak up and get involved, the message from a few can continue to be ignored by the bishops. So here we go. Well, I first want to thank Richard Windmann, who is literally in the studio with us. And
in the studio.
We don't have
the house.
We don't have a lot of in-studio guests. Everything's by phone or Zoom or something like that. So we're very honored to have you here in our, we call it the dungeon, the studio dungeon here.
It's a wonderful studio.
In Northeast
Or
Pennsylvania.
the boys call it the Lurkum, remember?
Right, the Lurkum from Dr. Seuss. But for those of you that don't remember, because Richard has joined us a few times now on the show, he's the co-founder and president of Men's Support Programs, a media spokesperson for the SCSA's primary purpose is to advocate for and support victims and survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And to find Richard and the SCSA, you have to go on to www.scsaorg.org. So thank you for joining us today, Richard.
Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate it. And you've been quite hospitable to us. And I brought my clan with me.
Which has been wonderful.
My entourage.
Now we had the opportunity, and it was our honor to be on Thursday night in Philadelphia with you and your entourage at your table and representing the SCSA for the Child USA dinner. And Child USA is the leading national nonprofit think tank fighting for civil rights of children. Their mission is to employ in-depth legal analysis and cutting-edge social science research to protect children, prevent future abuse and neglect, and bring justice to survivors. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was a wonderful evening, as you know. Child USA helped SCSA and some other folks in Louisiana with actually getting the statute of limitations eliminated with a 3-year window. So that's was an incredible development. A lot of survivors will get justice now, and that's just one of their functions. You know, like we talked about before, you know, they study the social sciences of childhood sex abuse. They work on the laws. It's an incredible organization. They're very, very good and effective in what they do.
Now, we're talking about statute of limitations, and I don't think I realized until we started getting involved and looking into what was happening in our own backyard with the clerical sex abuse and the cover-up. It was only then that I realized that a real obstacle to justice for anyone who's been a victim of sexual abuse is statute of limitations.
That's right.
Like there's been these tiny, tiny windows from the time you're abused to where you have to report it, where your abuser could be prosecuted. And if you don't meet that tiny window, then you're out. You're out of luck. And so many people who have been abused as children, especially by very powerful authority figures like priests, when they finally come forward, they were finding that their abuser could get off scot-free. It was out of the statute of limitations. Am I correct?
You're correct. And it's really the statute of limitations reform is important because statistically, victims and survivors, they don't come forward until their late 40s or early 50s. That's why it's so important to reform it or eliminate it. Because, well, what a victim wants more than money is they want justice. They want to see their guy go away. They want to see their guy, their guy. That's horrible to say. They want to see their abuser punished in some kind of way.
Well, I've been saying for a long time that I want to see the criminal prosecution of these guys and have no statute of limitations criminally. And I know people are like, oh, you can't do that, but the bar is so much higher criminally. Yeah. But we need to go after that. We want them in jail. We want justice for what they've done to survivors.
Well, we can strengthen those criminal laws, more severe penalties, whatever, but we can't do look back windows because that's unconstitutional in criminal law.
Sure. But in civil law, you can do a look back window.
Absolutely.
And the civil case is a chance. It's not just a money grab. It's an opportunity with a look back window to have litigation and open up and find out, how did this guy get to my parish and to me? Like, what happened? Mm-hmm. It's a way to find things out. Brian Kleitz, he has worked on survivors groups and the movement of survivors in the United States, survivors of sexual abuse, specifically clerical sexual abuse, Dr. Brian Kleitz. And he talked about, as he looked through the history, that the idea that you even have to enter into litigation and go to court and pay out money and everything, that was never started by the survivors. Mm-hmm. They were forced into that corner by the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. They were. And civil litigation is very, very important. And I'll tell you why, is because when they go through the discovery process, that's when the secrets are revealed.
Well, it seemed to me so many of these cases, though, I know in the case in our diocese, the Father Al Liberatore, because they settled so soon, there was so much information that they had we didn't get. Mm-hmm. That's gone.
I know. Even when you read the case, it's ridiculous. But yeah, there's a lot that didn't come out because they quick settled after the second day in court.
Yep.
To protect people.
Yep. And did they seal those documents?
You can read the court case right. So you can read the court case and you can read what was there, but as a result, other stuff didn't come out, like depositions and things. Other depositions. It was just certain stuff. Yeah, it's statute of limitations. What Child USA did is they got together with their attorneys. They have a lot of attorneys there that are able to help, and they were able to write good legislation that would withstand, I'm sure, challenges in court. And in Louisiana, you were able to bring people together on both sides of the aisle for this, right?
It was a remarkable, I was very, very skeptical that this was going to go anywhere. I mean, first off, it's a nonpartisan issue because we can all agree that children and their safety and their sanctity is our number one priority. However, in Louisiana, the Catholic Church is the government, if you ask me. And so, we have all of these Catholic legislators and senators, just about all of them. And it's so conservative in that way with the church. I never imagined in a million years that we would get this. We went into it asking for the age to be lifted from 10 years past your 18th birthday. We were asking for 35 years. We did, Child USA did their part. The legislator did his part. We shipped in survivors and victims from all over the state. and they testified before the House committees and the Senate committees. And it was their testimony, the victims and survivors, that compelled them to completely eliminate it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you, am I right in my thinking here that, so people understand why it's so important not to have like a limit on the age? If the original law had been 10 years past your birthday, that mean your 18th birthday, that means when you were 28 years old, by age 28, you had to come forward. Now, if I look back, I'm 51, almost 52. If I look back to my 20s, my mid 20s, you're getting ready, you're getting a job, you're graduating from college, you're trying to find someone maybe to marry, get your life started. That's a really hard time to even deal with the fact you were abused, right? At that point in your life, let alone come forward and do all that. It's really rough.
Yeah, because there's repressed memories that typically happens with a younger child, 5, 6, 7 years old. But then there's recessed memories, or how do I say it? And those are people that they don't forget about it. It's always clear in their mind. Take me, for example. I was abused from 7 to 17. So there was no repressed memories. There was recessed memories. I filed it away. I always knew that I was abused. I mean, it was such a huge part of my childhood. It was my entire childhood. And I got busy. And I just really invested myself in my academics. I got my PhD, about to graduate law school. I got busy with my family. I got busy with my career. But either way the memory goes, late 40s, early 50s, that's when it hits you like a ton of bricks. Either you start remembering your abuse, or it was always there and it's boiled over and you can't take it anymore. And that's when things go downhill for survivors. They can't tell anybody. It's a secret. And so they self-medicate to kill the pain. Drugs, alcohol, anything to kill the pain. Drugs never really stuck with me. Alcohol wasn't my problem. It wasn't my solution. And I started drinking very, very heavily. And I almost died. Going back at 19, I committed suicide. I say committed because it wasn't a yell for help. I really intended to die. But they got to me before that. Hard drinker, late 40s, early 50s, just anything to deal with it. But once you come forward and once you say something, you tell somebody, anybody. It doesn't have to be the press, it doesn't have to be a mother. Just tell anybody about your abuse. That's when the healing starts. That's where the healing starts. And survivors, they need a couple of things. They need trauma-informed counseling. Got to be trauma-informed because they can do advanced therapies like EMDR. They need to go to a doctor and get on some medication because all of these survivors, they have some things in common. Most of them, just about 100% of them, is PTSD. Some even have an advanced form called CPTSD, or complex. They have anxiety disorders. They have all of them are depressed. So they're in bad shape to begin with, and that's why it's so important for them to come forward and start getting the care. And with SCSA, that portion of the healing is the fellowship. Being in a room with another survivor, looking at a survivor, and just, my wife thinks she knows me, and she does, but I can sit in a room with a survivor and I know everything about him in terms of his abuse. Everything. I know what he's been through. I know what he's been thinking. And so that's important. So 3 key components. Mm-hmm. That is trauma, abuse, counseling, go see a doctor, get on some meds, and fellowship.
And just as an example, if people contact the www.scsaorg.org, you can put them in touch with all of this?
Absolutely. We do free referrals. We talk to you and find out a little bit about you. And it depends on where you are, too, because we're nationwide. And so, yeah, we can do medical referrals. We can do legal referrals. We have our weekly support meetings.
Because I can't imagine it's just from the little bit that I know that it's super easy to find the trauma-informed counseling, correct?
It's hard.
Right, that's what I mean. It can't be super easy to find that.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, it's a big wave in psychology departments across the nation. Is a lot more. We're making progress, awareness, and so we're having a lot more LPCs coming out that are trauma informed. But it's taken time.
Just to get back to real quick, because I'm very curious about this. Is going back a little bit to the criminal statute of limitations, and if is there a reason we can't extend those? I know you said, we can't have a look back window, but can't you extend the criminal statute of limitations? Because I know states aren't required, the Constitution doesn't require states to have a statute of limitations criminally, but can't they?
Absolutely.
They can.
Yeah, they can change. They can change all the criminal laws. They can make them beefier, some more severe penalties, better statute of limitations on it. But you can't do a look back window because that's it's not constitutional. But we can protect the kids today by fixing those laws.
And one of the reasons, I guess, to have statute of limitations in the law is this idea of being able to start anew, and I think if somebody, I don't know, you robbed a convenience store when you're 19, you get away with it, and 30 years later, you've turned your life completely around. You're a whole different person. It would make sense, like, okay, you know what? Mm-hmm. Like that was 30 years ago. Yeah. To bring him in now and have him serve his time, you're like, you know what? I'm with you. I don't want that to happen. But I think people need to realize, and this is why we need to make sure in our own states and in the state of Pennsylvania that we keep pushing, that we see through the change on our statute of limitations with child sex abuse, is the fact that the guy who's amended his life 30 years later and is a new man is no longer a danger to the community. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that the data out there shows if some guy 30 years ago abused a child or a teenage boy, a teenage girl, even, it's 30 years later, this hasn't stopped. And there's many more victims.
Yeah, what we know about pedophiles is that they never have just one victim, and they will reoffend. They have the highest rate of recidivism than any other crime category. They can't help what they do. It's their libido, and it's intense. And that's what they do. And going back to the crime, same thing. Myself, I was arrested when I was 16 for stealing a car. In fact, I stole a car from the pedophile that was trying to rape me. And so, today's Richard at 57 years old is a totally different person. You can't do that with a pedophile. They will always reoffend, and they will have multiple victims.
And the church has known this since the early 50s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It was made
since 390 AD.
Yeah, they've known that. Exactly. If you start to really go back and read, they've known. And so when you hear the line, we didn't know, we thought we could rehabilitate them, we thought this could happen, it's just another talking point. It's just not the truth.
And you can reach out to Richard at www.scsaorg.org. You can listen to us on KCRD-FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Google Play, and Spotify, and find us, as always, at theangrycatholic.com. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Angry Catholic Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Richard Windmann. So for our angry item of the day, we came in with not just American priests. And it was in New Orleans, and this just happened recently that we found out about this. Actually, today. A New Orleans priest accused of child rape, now under scrutiny for financial crimes, and the audit detailed potential irregularities in which nearly $400,000 of church congregants' funds were allegedly misused. And basically, it's a Catholic priest who led one of New Orleans' best-known inner-city churches until being accused of sexually molesting a child has been reported to federal authorities for a possible financial crimes after an audit that he found he spent nearly the $400,000 that I was talking about. And his name is John Asari Dankwa, and I'm probably butchering that.
Yeah, me too.
So share with us what you've come to know about this.
So I've been watching this case for a while. So there's a lawsuit filed by a victim, an alleged victim, against the priest, and he immediately went to the Congo. So it kind of looked like he was running, and we all thought that, oh no, we'll never see him again. But he came back, and so he has one alleged victim. He was a very, very popular priest in New Orleans. And so today we just found out in the Guardian national news that this guy is allegedly taken $400,000 from the church. He has an attorney. He's lawyered up for that civil case. And you wonder, priests live very modestly. Where do they get money to hire attorneys? Well, maybe this is how he did it.
Right.
Well, and this priest, I guess he's still denying that he assaulted this kid, and he filed a defamation suit, it said. Mm-hmm. Has he still filed it, or do you know if...
I don't know the status of it.
Okay. It's horrible. My gut instinct, I'll be honest, is like, gosh, he filed the defamation suit. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I'm getting tired of benefit of the doubt. And then it turns out these guys lied, and they it's
in the Guardian.com, in the article that we're talking about, he lost his pastorship over the child rape claim filed against him. So I guess we just know from personal experience, for the diocese to, take those actions, they know something.
But he's not on the list of credibly accused priests.
Well, he said, just in the article too, he said, they quote him as saying from a letter that he wrote before 4 months before the audit into the finances were completed. They have him quoted as saying, "I am totally, completely, and perfectly innocent." That's what the priest, the accused priest, wrote.
Yes, and he's maintained that the whole time.
Okay.
Yes.
You know what? It's sad because I really do. I mean, I hope he's innocent. I hope this is a case, this outlier because you don't want this. But like I said, I'm tired of this. It's like this Bennett trying to give the benefit of the doubt, trying to respect somebody innocent till proven guilty, and then they're just turning around and being lied to and manipulated again and again and again. And the fact of the matter is, these 10-year-olds, it's just showing they're not making this up.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you tell who the good guys are? You can't. How do you do it? And you have to do the benefit of the doubt. But it's really, really hard because, as a survivor, every time I see a priest, with the exception of a few, I see a pedophile.
Yeah, it's sad. Very sad, but it's their actions that leads us to that, and what we know to be true, and all the things that we know to be true that we can't even talk about publicly that we know are true. That's why we think that. That's why we think the way we do. It's their act, and especially in New Orleans, their track record is one of the most awful.
And
FBI investigation, IRS investigation, the sex scandal, the bankruptcy. I don't know what the Pope is doing, but, I'd be on the phone with Archbishop Greg Amen right now if I was him.
Well, and the taking advantage of again and again and again of faithful Catholics, and letting everybody rally around you, and letting everybody, help you and support you and protect you and go after anyone, and then to turn around and basically spit in their face when it all comes to pass that these guys have been guilty and that all these people around them knew, and they let faithful Catholics do this. It leaves, I have a very bad taste in my mouth at this point because of that. One thing that kind of a side issue to this article, though, is that this priest is from Ghana. And I know in our diocese, the Diocese of Scranton, our diocese went this summer, our bishop did, to, I believe it was Ghana as well, and did a pastoral visit because we have some priests from Ghana who are helping our diocese because we have such a shortage with priests. And at first, and we actually know one of the priests from Ghana. He's at a parish that we go to, and he's been great. And I'm thinking, well, this is kind of neat. This is neat to have like these priests from a whole different part of the world come, and it shows the universal church. And it usually my experience has been when you have a priest from like Africa, he's usually far more conservative and faithful. So you end up getting a homily that's not bothering you. But as I started thinking deeper on this, I was realizing, the status of a priest coming from Ghana or these other countries, they're here on like a special visa. And not only if they were to abuse a kid, could they be just quick shuffled back, but and let's look on the positive side. If you have a solid priest who's coming to minister and be like a missionary, and he sees things happening that aren't okay and that are wrong, and he doesn't want to turn and look the other way, he's still shipped back to his country. Like if we're bringing all these priests in from Africa, from Latin America, are we going to have a church where priests can step up and stand up and voice and say something's wrong, or are we going to just have a lot of cover up?
It seems like human trafficking at a different level because, Father Ryszard Biernat from Poland, when he came, they took away his passport. That's something like a sex trafficker would do, and it's just disgusting all the way. And it's a sad situation, but we don't have anybody here that wants to be a priest. So we have to get our priest from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia.
Well, some of these bishops, they're no better than sex traffickers.
Oh, yeah.
With what they do and what they know and what they've covered up and allowed to happen. I mean,
actually, they might be worse than sex traffickers because sex traffickers aren't trying to act as if they're shepherds, spiritual leaders here to preach and teach the gospel.
Amen.
If you're concerned about these issues, it's very important for us to share this information. Chris and I, along with a group of supporters, publish this show and want to ask for your help by sharing it. Email it, post it on social media, text it, or just tell somebody about it. You can be sure if you don't, then nothing will change. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Richard Windmann from SCSA. So for our final segment, we came in with a mandatory reporter find. And this is actually in The Guardian also. And it's in the New Orleans part of The Guardian. It says, New Orleans lawyer fined for alerting school to priest's past sexual misconduct. So what do you know about this, Richard?
What I know about it, I know the attorney. So the attorney has represented me in the past. His name's Richard Trahant. Super guy. He's not one of these ambulance chasers that became sex abuse attorneys, experts overnight. He's been representing these folks for years, and it hits him hard. He takes it home with him. He cares about survivors and victims. He's constantly reading. You don't have to call him and chase him down. He calls you and checks up on you. And it's probably one of the most punitive things I've ever seen, ever, to fine somebody $400,000 because he reported childhood sex abuse to the administrator of a school. Wow. And it's
and it was a local Catholic high school that this particular priest worked for, who had, I guess it says in the article, admitted to fondling and kissing a teen girl he met at another church institution.
He was 30 at the time. She was 17, and he was a priest doing this to this young girl.
Yeah, and the New Orleans bankruptcy is going on right now, so there's the Secured Creditors Committee. We have a couple of victims that were on that committee, plus Richard Trahant was involved as well, and the judge kicked everybody off of it the day that they were supposed to mediate it. So I don't know if it's fishy or what. I know that a man is being prosecuted right now, and I can't stand it. $400,000 for reporting childhood sex abuse. It's appalling.
Well, I guess the judge, her name is Meredith Graybell. She ordered a leak investigation because Hart is the priest. His file was among documents the church had classified as confidential. Now, what I guess my question would be to the church is, you have this guy with a file that he fondled and kissed a 17-year-old girl while he was a priest, 30 years old. And you then later down the line have him at a boys' school. But he shouldn't be teaching boys. Any priest who's going to be doing that shouldn't be around boys, let alone girls.
They shouldn't be around children.
Like, what is he there in the first place? He's got it. And you've decided his file was confidential. It's classified or something. Like, it's got nuclear codes in it or something. And it's not. It's that the guy messes around and he shouldn't be around kids. I don't know why that's, there's a lot of questions here. I don't know why that's classified as confidential. So then when this attorney keeps hearing about this, because he's on the bankruptcy thing, and he knows that this guy's sitting there at this school, basically what they're saying is they're expecting those survivors that had been on that committee and these attorneys, that when you're finding out about these guys and who are still out there, you're supposed to, you're just bound by ethics or something to not say anything. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous, right?
It is. And there's a lot of free guys out there too. One of them is Lawrence Hecker, Monsignor Lawrence Hecker. He took kids across state lines, and he's the subject of an investigation, the Mann Act, and he's out free today. And the guy, he's living the life of Riley right now. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of breaking up on you.
Yeah, no, well, this is the same thing. These bishops hide behind the legality of this. And we as Catholics allow these guys to do that. We actually, it's worse than that. We fund them to be able to do this, to be able to hide behind these laws when...
Well, they said it violated the confidentiality of the bankruptcy case. And all I want to know is, the foundations of Western civilization's laws were given to us by, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Catholic Church. And we have so perverted it to a point that when you have confidentiality in a bankruptcy case, that means that you're going to get in trouble if you warn people that there's a predator with kids.
Yeah, and if you look at the Boy Scout case, the Boy Scout bankruptcy, which is bigger than the New Orleans bankruptcy, is probably the largest bankruptcy ever. There's no confidentiality. There's no sealed documents by judges whose wives work for the Catholic Church. It's horrible. You know, I was talking about Lawrence Hecker earlier, and in his deposition, he admits to these crimes, but because they're sealed, it's not investigated. Well, until we brought it to light, anyway.
Well, I haven't seen, other than a few circumstances, I don't see any real investigations going on in regard to the church. I don't. The investigations that, well, I guess most of them, it just doesn't exist. But the investigations we have seen, we hear things like, or we find out things like, they didn't even talk to the people involved in the case.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
right. Yeah.
That's their investigation. And we find out like firsthand, they didn't even talk to certain people that were crucial in these investigations that the church supposedly takes care of. And they're funding it too. So, think of that what you will.
Well, they said that what the judge was trying to do was stop the leaks. She didn't want the leaks, but this says everything about this attorney. He said he believed he acted as any officer of a court of law should.
Absolutely.
He said, I don't believe I violated the confidentiality order by alerting a school about a cleric who had previously engaged in misconduct with the teen, the attorney said. I'm going to do something about it 10 out of 10 times.
He's my hero.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd call that like real solid Christian behavior, right?
Oh, he's Catholic.
Yeah. And boy, isn't he acting like one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he went to Jesuit high school. Just a really good stand-up guy. I mean, they should have rewarded him for $400,000, not fined him $400,000. That's crazy.
Yeah, you can't use the law and manipulate the law as a way to protect the church and allow the church to continue to hide and enable predators. Like, we just can't do it.
Well, that's exactly what's happening in New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what good is the institution with all this garbage going on behind the scenes? Well, now, stuff that we know now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what though? I'm going to just put this out there, and I don't understand. Let me just put it out. Why? What is? I guess that's what I keep thinking. Like, because I know we had our Pennsylvania grand jury report, and I appreciated that Attorney General Josh Shapiro. I know he's not a Catholic, but I did not in any way think he was going after the church. I appreciated what he did. As a Catholic, I appreciated it. I appreciated that he brought a lot of this truth out, and that he gave a voice to people so that they could be validated and believed and have the proper respect and care that they deserve after this abuse and how it had been hidden and how they had been like gaslit for so long. My only criticism was he didn't go far enough, and it stopped. And I want them to go farther. I want to not only know what happened to a victim, I want to know every person around that let it happen, that enabled it, that lied and covered up. And I want them to go after the diocese when they withheld information, because I know my diocese didn't give them everything.
Well, but he also lamented during the press conference that the law wasn't on our side, and he's the Attorney General. But I read an article a couple of days ago where they picked up like 4 or 5 guys, Josh Shapiro did. I think he'd make a fine governor.
Yeah, I'm not you can support open forum. Okay.
Open forum.
You get to do your thing. I don't want him for governor, but I totally appreciate what he did. I don't think he's a horrible person at all like that. But I think that's actually something both of the candidates running in Pennsylvania for governor would agree on. That's probably one of the only things they would agree on.
I'll even take it one step further. I'm thinking at this point that although I'm happy that the Pennsylvania grand jury came out, no doubt we needed that information in the public.
No, that was a watershed moment.
We absolutely needed that, and I give him kudos for that. But being in Pennsylvania, I've seen nothing I've seen no chanceries raided. I've seen no doors broken down. I've seen no secret files being taken. Now, there's a chance, and I think I said this a couple weeks ago. I mean, obviously, there's a chance that behind the scenes, they're working frantically to put this together. I don't think so, because I've seen nothing. And there's so much information missing from the grand jury report that needs to be investigated. And obviously the church is not going to do that. The bishops are a complete waste in regard to that.
Yeah, of course.
So my opinion of Shapiro then, not that it matters to anybody, but is what happened? Nothing has happened from it. Nothing.
Or are there laws we have to change that give them the ability to do that?
Well, actually, the grand jury report and that press conference was so potent.
Yeah.
And it was so real, and you could touch it with your fingers, the words coming out. He did such a wonderful job of articulating the problem.
Sure.
It actually started this new wave of, this has got to get done, and advocacy and everything like that. He made everybody pay attention.
But it's been 4 years.
Oh, that's a Pennsylvania problem, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
No, and that's
and
part of
that's
it.
disturbing. It's really disturbing to have somebody at that level of power that did this, that took, I'll call it the low-hanging fruit, because that's what I think it was now. I think he took the low-hanging fruit and made it public, which is wonderful. But what have you done?
So
what have you done? Why hasn't our chancery been raided for the files?
Here's what we can do. I just need one legislator, just one, who's willing to sponsor a bill to do this, and then I'll give them all the attorneys that they need to get it done through Child USA.
Yeah.
Just like we did in Louisiana. We need one brave legislator. That's it.
That will. Well, I know Pennsylvania's, they passed statute of limitations reform, and we're trying to, and it's supposed to be, it's going to take a while, I guess. It has the way they've done it, but there are other good, solid statute of limitation bills that are being held up in the legislature of Pennsylvania.
Held up.
Yep, that are. Yeah. Sean Doherty was talking about it. Yep. Of SNAP. Sean Doherty of SNAP. But it was, so there are things, I wonder, and maybe it's something for us to look into just to know, are there any changes we could make legally in Pennsylvania so that the Attorney General could get more files and could, or at very least prosecute those dioceses that didn't give them all?
I don't see how he could investigate it right now with just the information in the grand jury report and the information, like, for example, that we know that's not in there. How do you and I find out about this? Why aren't they finding out about this information?
Oh, I know.
I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do know that the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, that should be disbanded, because it's as far as I'm concerned, it's just a corrupt, horrific organization, and it fights tooth and nail to stop statute of limitation reform. It is fought. We Catholics have funded the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference.
They're the ones fighting against Sean Doherty that's trying to help enact
they
this
fought against
legislation.
Victims. We Catholics are paying to fight against justice for our fellow Catholics who were hurt in this church. And they've, so that I think that's a lobby that we don't need to have. And I know they say the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference does other stuff, like they push pro-life and pro-family bills. That's great, but there's all these other organizations that can do that in Pennsylvania. Put your money and your time to them. Get it out of the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. We don't need them. They don't need to be there. They need to be out. I never thought I'd be this person saying it. The Catholic Church does not need to have lobbying organizations in the government.
Absolutely not.
Catholics can get up and lobby as private citizens with a real faith behind them in their motivation, but not the church. It's corrupted it.
But that goes back to the IRS, because as a 501c3 like the church is, they're not supposed to do any lobbying, but they do. In Louisiana, we face that with the Louisiana Council of Bishops, for which the Archbishop is the head of.
Well, I still don't understand, as far as the 501c status, how they're allowed to file bankruptcy to begin with. I don't understand how.
I don't either. They don't contribute to the tax base.
Like, wouldn't they be held to a higher standard of 501c? Wouldn't that
C3,
be
yeah.
C3? Wouldn't that organization or that entity be held to a higher standard and not have the ability to file bankruptcy?
It's separation of church and state. They should not be able to avail themselves to the courts.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't.
No, the irony in Louisiana, even though at the end of the day, you guys were successful, and you were and you gave like a blueprint with how to get things done that hopefully we can. But the irony of it is, Deacon Peyton and his wife Letitia, whose son had been abused by the priest that he was the deacon at the parish for this pastor.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to say the priest's name because I'm just tired of these guys. They pushed hard and they fought for statute of limitations reform in Louisiana. And they literally fought, and they fought face to face with their fellow Catholics in the church who were pushing against a family that had been so personally harmed by this. And they were on different sides as Catholics. And I don't know everything, but I know who was on God's side. And it wasn't that institutional church.
Yeah, I know them very well. And they're good people. And it's amazing to me that they keep their faith after they've been prosecuted so much.
Yeah. Just to wrap us up here.
Okay.
Share with anyone who's in need.
Yeah.
Not only because I'll let people know how to contact you again, and to be able to, you can absolutely go on the website and donate. I say all the time, we have to support organizations, do the heavy lifting, and Richard's organization is one of those organizations that does the heavy lifting. So just share with people the different things that they are able to do with the SCSA. Yeah,
so donations are important. The organization's almost 2 years old, and I have I financed the organization for the first 8 months, and then donations started rolling in. So, we're a big organization. We have a board of directors. We've saved a lot of lives. We've lost a couple of people. Just donate if you can, and if you can't donate right now, think about us a little bit later.
Okay, well, you can find Richard at www.scsaorg.org, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Angry Catholic Show. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't forget to share this show any way you can. I want to thank all the listeners who sent emails this week. Thank you, Chris, and a special thanks to Richard Windmann, who you can find at www.scsaorg.org. Stay active, stay alert, and stay angry.
This has been a production of Dumb Ox Media, Inc. All rights reserved.